How's it going, Twitch? My name is Skull, and on behalf of EastasiaSoft, welcome to today's stream. Today is Sunday, which means that it's time for me to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel. I have been talking to one of my friends who is really big on visual novels, and they recommended that I take a look at the tips. They don't give spoilers, they do give a little bit of insight into what has been going on, while also raising a whole lot more questions, which is just the theme of this game. So today I'm going to start off by looking at the tips. It shouldn't take too long, and then I'm going to continue right where we left off last time, with Sachiko about to go and meet the aunt of the inn. Let's go ahead and look at the tips. See what we got to work with here. Looks like we've got 4 tips total to work on right now. Tips 1, Narasaki's Clinic, room 008. I love this. This is beautiful art of Takako. I hope we figure out what's going on with her. No way to know whose perspective this is. Pale light filled the early morning corridor, its stale, humid air tickling my nose. I shook my still somewhat drowsy head and continued with my daily routine, inspecting the room equipment, so I guess this is Narasaki's point of view. Today was room 008's turn. Not breaking my stride, I pulled out a bunch of keys from my pocket and began looking for the one marked with the number 008. There must have been about 50 keys on that bunch, and with a notebook under my armpit, it took quite a while until I found the key I was looking for. That said, I still managed to have it ready by the time I reached the door with the number 008. As I opened it, the room on the other side sucked much of the fresh air inside, almost like it was breathing. This is the room that Takako looked inside. This isn't Narasaki's point of view. Whose is this? I quickly entered and went on with my business, making sure that all the furniture and equipment in this murky, dust-riddled room was still in the right place. The table and the sofa were covered with white sheets, making them look like ghosts. A cardboard box rested next to the sofa. It had been over 10 years since this place turned into a storage room. It had actually been half a year since I last came here. After glancing over the furniture, I moved on to the shelves by the wall. One of the shelves was filled with dishware, while the other boasted a whole collection of thick, hardcover books. On the dishware shelf, there were a bunch of white plates stacked upon each other, alongside a few cups and saucers further down. I spotted a case wrapped in a piece of cloth with checkered design. In it, there were forks, spoons, and knives. My gaze halted on one particular dish in the back of the shelf that stood out from the rest. The previous owner of the room made it in an elementary school, back when she was a member of a pottery club. It was about palm-sized and shaped like a tulip, covered in reddish-brown, like rusted iron. She received some help from the club supervisor, a professional potter, but aside from the color, she was relatively satisfied with how it turned out. I considered the dishes one more time, feeling as though I had missed something. She made 3 dishes in total over the time she spent at the pottery club during her 6th year of elementary school. One she presented to her grandfather, but the other 2 she kept on this shelf. However, the green dish that was supposed to be next to the reddish-brown one wasn't there. I opened my notebook. It had everything about this room marked down in detail. I turned the page to find that there was indeed supposed to be a green cup here. There were no notes of it being removed. It seemed as though it had simply disappeared by itself. I crossed it out and wrote down today's date slightly above it. Since I found one article missing, I decided to check every single item inside. It was nowhere near as easy as it initially sounded. After I finished, I found out that 2 books were also missing from the shelf. I crossed them out too and wrote today's date above them. With that done, I left the murky room and locked the door behind me. I glanced at the clock to realize the whole ordeal took me over an hour. Returning the keys to the night duty room, I continued with my other duties. I wonder what the significance of that is. So, is that the room that Takako went in? Also, that's not Narasaki's clinic, so... Room 208. Let's check out that. After finishing a light meal in the cafeteria, I returned to the kitchen and prepared a small dish for one. I used the same boiled vegetables I ate for my own dish and had already prepared the previous day. All I had to do was warm them up. I picked up the tray I'd placed the vegetable plate and rice bowl on, then left the kitchen. From the lobby, I ascended the stairs to the second floor and knocked on the door of the room at the end of the corridor, the one marked with the number 208. As Sachiko ate, I sat down in the cane chair and once again looked over the list of things that had disappeared from the mansion. What is it you're always checking over there? Looking up, I noticed that Sachiko had already finished her meal. I'm making a note of all the things that disappeared from this mansion. Disappeared? Has there been a burglary or something? No, nothing has been stolen. The things here tend to disappear and reappear in other places, that's all. And how exactly do they disappear? I don't know. I've never witnessed the actual moment when they disappear. By the time I take notice, they're already gone. You mean you've never actually witnessed it? I nodded. Could it be you can't even notice things if they vanish and reappear right in front of your eyes? That'd be odd. There's nothing odd about it. It's just how the world works. Then why are you so concerned about it? Everything here happens for a reason, and I want to know that reason. Besides, if possible, I'd rather not forget what used to be here. Sachiko glanced outside the window. It was black as night and you couldn't see anything, but the light from outside still illuminated the room to a certain extent. Sachiko came to this clinic 3 days ago without warning. She's in the clinic too? It'd been a long while since she last visited, so it surprised me. I let her into the reception room and listened to what she had to say. She seemed tired and somewhat pale. When I asked her about it, she said her job had been pretty hectic lately. When I asked her why, she told me Takako had passed away due to an illness. Apparently, Sachiko took over her workload in their office on top of looking after her when she ended up bedridden. Aww. She told me she wanted some rest and I lent her one of my rooms. When I glanced back at her, she was still looking at the window. Sachiko wouldn't leave the room the next day either. There were few things missing in the room I checked that day, too. It was a bit strange to have things disappear in such quick succession, but I was particularly interested in what the missing Fariben was. I returned to my room, still none the wiser about the whole situation. Fariben. Did we know that word last time? As I reached my desk, I opened the list, and after looking up proper nouns, left a little note for myself. Sometime afternoon, I felt hungry and made my way to the kitchen. I'd already had lunch, so I figured the refrigerator for something light. The massive silver fridge had 9 drawers. I pulled out a sizable pear from the bottom one and sliced it up to pieces with a kitchen knife. I left the room with a tray of freshly made tea and a plate of pear slices. I looked outside the window as I ascended the stairs. The inner yard was surrounded by walls from every angle. Even the sky, dark and filled with clouds, looked rectangular. Sachiko was reading a book in her room, as usual. You shouldn't forget to exercise. You'll get sick if all you do is read. I placed the plate with pear slices on the side table. Sachiko glanced at the plate and thanked me, but instead of eating anything, returned her full attention to the book. I sat down in the cane chair with my own plate and began reading the novel I'd brought with myself. After a while, I began hearing crunchy sounds from Sachiko's direction, which made me look up from my book. She was looking at the window. That window was always dark. You could never see anything beyond it. Sachiko mentioned it was odd, but kept looking at it all the same. She also said how odd it was that things kept disappearing. In this clinic, however, things kept disappearing and reappearing without warning. The ones that appear tend to be daily necessities that you can never forget. For example, the fridge I looked at just earlier would fill up without my knowledge. Sachiko would probably say that was odd too. I'm going to look at the flower beds in the inner yard. Want to come with me? I finished the last slice of my pear and looked at Sachiko. It's been raining a lot, so I want to check up on the flowers. I feel like it would do you some good to go outside a bit instead of staying in bed all day and night. You may be right. I brought our plates to the kitchen while Sachiko got changed. After I returned to her room and picked her up, we continued to the inner yard to look at the flower beds. The inner yard was between the four wings of this building. The weather seemed to have taken a turn for the better by the time we finally went outside. We could see spots of blue sky among the clouds. Ah, pretty picture. As soon as we stepped outside, we were welcomed by cosmos flowers. They were swaying left and right in the fierce wind. At first look, it didn't seem like any of the flowers ended up with broken stems. Similarly, the soil looked fine as well. I crouched next to one of the flower beds, brushed the dirt from the brick block, and pulled a piece of a weed from between some of the flowers. Do you like cosmos flowers? I do. Sachiko came to my side and began pulling out weeds herself. I gave her face a long and hard look as I continued working. She looked better compared to when she first arrived. Are you feeling better now? Sachiko nodded after a slight pause. I'm causing you trouble, aren't I? You can stay here for as long as you want, as far as I'm concerned. But what about your job? I'm on paid vacation right now. I see. Sachiko had already spent 4 days here. I doubted you could take that many paid days off. Even in the case of a death in your immediate family, you would usually only get 2 or 3 days in this country. A wave of sound spilled forth from the speakers in the inner yard, making Sachiko raise her head. After a few more moments of noise, they started playing some music. Is something happening? Sachiko looked at the speaker up in the tree with a confused expression. No, it's just music. Where's it coming from? From the broadcasting room. There are many records there, so they play some of them from time to time. What for? Just to listen. After staring at me for a short while, Sachiko noted how odd it was. So, Sachiko went to a clinic after Takako died. Can't say I blame her, that had to hurt. 4 days had passed since Sachiko came here. I decided to go look for the medical records detailing her previous visits. Visits? More than one? She had been here on several occasions, and I was the one to examine her each of those times. I eventually treated and sent her home in a healthy state. Every time, I knew exactly what kind of role I had to fill. This time, however, I had yet to grasp it. That said, I didn't feel particularly worried. I was a doctor at this clinic, and there was only so much I could do for her. After Sachiko returned to her room, I made my way to the library in the other wing. Her old medical records should have been there. There was a corridor connecting the east and west wings. I unlocked the large double doors leading to it. Having been neglected for so long, the door opened with an audible creak. Beyond it, there was only darkness. Though the light switch was right next to the door, flipping it did absolutely nothing. Even the oculus window located in the middle of the ceiling was completely shrouded in darkness. I popped up the door so it wouldn't close behind me, switched on my flashlight, and stepped inside. The library was relatively big, circular structure. I couldn't even make out the wall on the other end of the room. The door I entered through was on the second floor, meaning there were 2 paths I could take. Both led to semicircular stairs. One was leading down, the other up. I chose the path leading down, and using the flashlight to make out my steps, began to slowly descend. The stairs themselves were made of black iron and had reliefs of flowers sculpted on them. Hard metallic sounds reverberated in the room with each of my steps. I finished my descent and continued to a shelf located right by the entrance. It was filled with medical records. With the help of my flashlight, I found Sachiko's old file. A cloud of dust burst up into the air as I pulled it out. I waved a hand in front of my face to get the dust away. Just in case, though, I brushed off the file with my hand before opening it. Right on the first page, I spotted some familiar-looking handwriting. It was mine. The date was already over 10 years ago. Her symptoms, treatment, and progress were all recorded in the document. So I guess when she was like a teenager? I deferred a little from how I currently filed my medical records, filling them with random superfluous observations and a number of unrelated information, almost like it was some diary. Feeling the grip of nostalgia on my heart, I looked over the record for a while longer, until I noticed the light of my flashlight growing dim. I promptly pulled out all of Sachiko's files from the shelf and returned the way I came. So she had been there before, and then she was there after Takako died. Can't blame her. The consultation room. I realized I'd been sleeping at the desk of my examination room. This has to be Nagasaki. The clock displayed the time as 10 p.m. I fixed up my hair, stood up, and took a can of beer from the fridge. I turned on my portable radio and, after adjusting the volume, focused my attention on writing the daily report. I might have called it a report, but it was no more than a rough list of what had happened during the day, separated into a few sections. As such, I finished writing it with little difficulty. I also made a note on Sachiko's overall condition. She had yet to tell me anything vital. However, I felt like it was about time for me to act. With Takako gone, Sachiko came to live on her own. I had my doubts she could survive for long in her current condition. A song I used to listen to came on the radio. I paused and took the opened beer can from the side of the table, but it was already empty. I stood up, walked to the freezer, and took out another can. I opened it, and after taking a gulp, shifted my gaze to the little window in the corner of the room. I could see the moon shining brightly in the cloudless sky. The sight made me calm down a little. This is definitely Nagasaki. Finally, someone we know for sure who it is. And I guess this is earlier on when Sachiko was first visiting her. So I guess from here on out, whenever we unlock tips, we should read them immediately so that we don't get lost. I flipped through the pages of one of the medical records I brought from the library. The early reports really did look more like a diary than anything. It was full of stories about Sachiko, me, and her usual companion Takako. I'd seen Sachiko maybe once or twice a year after we graduated elementary school, but Takako seemed to have been with her for the entire time. Those two were quite peculiar characters, to say the least. As I finished reading the page, I realized the volume of the radio had gone down. As I glanced at the radio, I saw that the red lamp indicating the life of the two AA batteries powering it had grown dim. It was about to go out completely. I considered removing the batteries and putting them back in. I even toyed with the idea of just shaking the radio. It was an old thing, though, with certain parts of it already rusted away, so I ultimately changed my mind. I finished listening to the distorted sound of the radio with a beer can in one hand, then focused on finishing my report. Are you allowed to have beer on you when you're a doctor? After a while, I realized I could hear a faint sound alongside the scraping noise of my pen against the paper. I paused, raised my hand, and strained my ears to listen. It was coming from somewhere close by. The more I listened, the more it sounded like someone's voice. I had no idea who was talking or what was being said, but it felt like someone had been whispering somewhere in the vicinity. I took a closer look at the radio, thinking it might have honed in on some weird wavelength, but its light had already gone completely dark. I considered the possibility of the sounds from Sachiko's room traveling all the way here due to some peculiarity of the mansion's design. Although I could no longer hear anything, urged by curiosity, I left my room. What does that mean? I had a slightly bad feeling on my way to Sachiko's room. This isn't Narasaki's clinic. What's going on? It felt as though the corridor was colder than usual. The closer I got to her room, the colder it felt, and the worse my feeling of premonition became. My first thought upon reaching her room was to open the door. However, I realized there was no light coming from her room and that it was pretty much the middle of the night. I decided to first check if there were any sounds coming from the room first. Placing my ear against the door, I listened in. I felt like I could vaguely hear something when I was walking towards her room, but now it had fallen into complete silence. After spending another minute or so listening, I still heard no voices whatsoever. I began to wonder if I'd just been my imagination playing tricks on me the whole time. In the end, I pulled back from the door and gave it a light knock. There was no answer. I unlocked the door, slowly pushed it open to make a small gap, all the while careful not to make a sound. The cold seeping out from inside made my skin tingle. The faint ray of light making its way inside from the corridor gave the pitch-black room some color. I stopped pushing the door by the time the light reached up to the bed and strained my eyes as I looked into the darkness. However, Sachiko wasn't there. I pushed the door open and entered the room. Sachiko was nowhere to be seen. I am so confused. These tips are not helping at all. Okay, this is the last tip we've got. Yep, bedroom. Bedroom it is. No matter where I looked, Sachiko was nowhere to be found. I considered the possibility of having mistaken the rooms, but after taking a better look, the sheets on the bed were obviously wrinkled. I tried coming up with the most likely possibilities for Sachiko not being here. It wasn't exactly the time to go outside, but perhaps she couldn't sleep and wanted to take a walk in the night. However, I also had the feeling it wouldn't be something so simple. I returned my attention to the room. It was much colder in there than out in the corridor, but its window was closed. I couldn't quite understand how that could have happened. However, I felt the room held the answers to her disappearance. As such, I decided to investigate it. The room seemed even darker than usual. I could barely make out the contours of the plants in the corner. It was possible that my eyes were just tired or there was something else I didn't think of. But I had a bad feeling about this. As I raised my face after checking the other side of the bed, I finally realized there was something left on top of it. It was the book that Sachiko used to read all the time after coming here. I picked it up to realize it was not a book, but rather a notebook with a leather cover. There was nothing written on either the cover or the back. I checked the weight with one hand. After a quick glance around the room, I returned my attention to the notebook. I felt hesitant to read her personal notes, but I had no other leads. Besides, Sachiko had never left it like this before. I made up my mind and opened it. There was no separate sections to indicate schedules. Instead, it was just a regular notebook with ruled lines. One neatly handwritten line followed the other, making up sentence after sentence. I failed to buy extra cheap cuttlefish for 100 yen, so I bought 2 sea breams for 200 yen instead. I paid 100 yen for my daikon, but then found out at the grocery they only cost 80. It's probably best to buy your fruit and vegetable at places like that. I went on a drive to the mountains with Sachiko. On our way back, Sachiko spotted a pussy willow. When I plucked one of its branches for ourselves, she worriedly asked if it was okay. But when we got home, she decorated our entrance with it. Is this Takako's diary? Sachiko's name came up, so I assumed this note was most likely written by Takako. At first, the note seemed to be mostly about cooking, but as they went on, I realized she was noting down every single detail with little to no consistency. The date on the first page was from a year ago, and the notes continued, jumping ahead days, sometimes even weeks, until they suddenly ceased, leaving most of the notebook blank. I checked the later pages to confirm it was really blank, then flipped through the entire thing again, trying not to get too caught up in the details. There was a point where the writing suddenly changed. It seemed like some of these were written by Sachiko. The room suddenly grew completely dark. Turning around, I noticed that the door had closed behind me. This is giving me the creeps. Thinking that Sachiko might have returned, I closed the notebook. But it wasn't anything anywhere near as nice. As my eyes slowly grew used to the dark, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. The foliage plants by the door had disappeared, and the bookshelf changed into a wardrobe, and there was now a new closet by the wall. Before I knew it, I was standing in a completely unfamiliar room. It felt a bitter chill rise up my spine as I confirmed that the notebook in my hands hadn't changed. I turned around to see an unfamiliar bed with curtains. I pulled one of the curtains aside and looked at the bed. Takako was sleeping on her back, with Sachiko nestled against her. What was going on? Trying to keep up with this unexpected situation, I gave my surroundings another scrutinizing look. I started with Takako's face. My intuition told me this Takako wasn't exactly alive, and I realized I had missed something. The date on the first page of the notebook was last year. In other words, this notebook might contain a description of Takako's death. I wondered why I had failed to realize that as soon as I saw the date, but then again, weirder things had been happening around me tonight. I couldn't blame my head for not being able to keep up. This has to be a dream or something. As I was organizing my thoughts, Sachiko slightly moved. Her eyelids slowly opened. It felt like time itself had stopped. Before long, however, I found myself transported back to the familiar confines of room 208. Yep. Did not help at all. I am just as confused as ever. That's where we're at. Oh, I just can't believe I did that. Main menu, please. That was my bad. Okay, here we go. Now we load back into the game to wherever we were. Okay. This is from Sachiko's perspective. We're about to meet the aunt who owns the inn. I am very confused. So, I can't even. After reaching the lobby, we took the left corridor, and after just a few steps, found a staircase leading underground to our right. We descended in an orderly line. Nagasaki, who was at the front, stopped at the bottom step and opened another set of doors. The sweet scent of sugar lingered in the air around us. I looked back and saw Kozue grimacing. After walking through a narrow underground corridor for a while, we reached the entrance to a wide room. We stepped over the stone tile that separated the two areas. Ooh, this is pretty. There was a round table and 3 chairs in the center of the room, as well as Nane's aunt in an apron. She was setting plates on the table. Oh, you're already here? Hello, said Nagasaki as I bowed my head. Nane's aunt said her greeting, then considered us one by one. Forgive me, but I'm still in the middle of preparations. Could you wait for me at that table? I'll be back in a second. She then disappeared into another room with a tray in hand. Before she closed the door, though, I caught a glimpse of an old stove. Doing as I'd been told, I pulled back one of the nearby chairs and sat down. Kozue did the same. Nagasaki walked over to the sofa closer to the window, and after brushing off some of the accumulated dust, collapsed on it with a sigh. The walls of the underground room were made of stone, with a couple of wooden windows at the top. This is a beautiful room. Can we all just take a moment to appreciate how pretty this room is? I like this room a lot. This is a pretty room, I gotta say. Through said windows, I could see the tree in the yard. I realized that the stairs next to Nagasaki's sofa led straight to it. Kozue, sitting in front of me, glanced around the room with an empty expression. Sorry to have kept you waiting. I turned around and noticed that Nane's aunt had returned from the other room. She came closer to us, wiping her wet hands on her apron. Oh, it's not a problem at all. I'm sorry for bothering you with such a busy time. I tried standing up, but Nane's aunt gestured for me to remain seated. Couldn't figure out who was talking, so. Oh, I'm not busy at all. And even if I was, I'd prioritize a good conversation over anything else. The older a person gets, the gloomier their conversations become. So you see, I'm grateful for any chance that lets me spend some time with you youngsters. She walked to the table and sat down in the one chair that still remained open. Nice to meet you. My name is Ake Lily. Just call me Lily, okay? Are you a foreigner? Asked Kozue. No, but I've spent a lot of time there. That's weird, said Kozue in a small voice. She chose not to pry further. Is it? I like my name, though. Lily made a sour face, pretending to be hurt. She turned to me, noticing that I'd been looking for a chance to introduce myself as well. You're Sachiko, right? I've heard all about you from Nane. She kept talking about what a beauty you were after she came back from Rome. It made her so excited when she learned you'd be dropping by for a visit. Nagasaki let out a suggestive rumble. She might look all grown up, but she's still a child inside. She's not causing you any trouble, is she? Not at all. If anything, I'm the one causing her trouble, and she's the one looking after me. I think she makes an excellent landlady. You said it, Nagasaki added. I'm glad to hear that. Oh, and I've seen you at the library. Your name was, Lily gave Kozue a gentle smile. Kozue returned a blank stare. Did you forget what we came here for? Asked Nagasaki. It's Kozue. Kozue looked at me and Nagasaki, then finally introduced herself. Ah, right, it was Kozue. Now I remember. I'm Lily, the caretaker of this inn. Nice to meet you. Lily placed her palm on the girl's small head, making Kozue's young face contort into a sour expression. Is the kitchen next door? I could smell something tasty from that direction. Lily then turned to me. Yes, that's right. After learning that I'd be having guests, I decided to put my old baking skills to use, you see. But things are not working out. I prepared in advance so it would only take a minute or two to serve you, but I must have lost my touch over the years. Oh, but don't you worry. I'm sure the taste is just fine. Do you happen to like sweet things? Yes. I looked towards the sofa. Lily shifted her gaze to Nagasaki as well. I prefer them to spicy food. They'd be perfect with some tea, I'm sure. They certainly are. Lily made a smile before turning to Kozue. And what about you? I don't know. Kozue made a troubled face. My favorite is a foreign type of pastry. I'm sure you'll like it too. Lily glanced at the clock on the wall. They should be finished by the time this old clock strikes 2. Just hold on for a little while longer, okay? Is it going to be the Spanish pastries? Yes, that's right. How did you know? I saw a picture of you in a Spanish bakery over at the cafeteria. Ah, I see. That certainly brings back memories. I used to work at that place for 2 years. That bakery was run by a married couple. They would look after me like their own daughter. I mustered the courage to go overseas, but finding proper work wasn't all that easy. I had a work visa, but I couldn't speak the language. And just when my savings were about to run dry, I chanced upon that bakery. The husband spoke English, so we could communicate. I explained to him that I came to Spain to learn about cooking, but had no connections over here, nor any money left over. So he offered to let me live and work at his place. You went all the way overseas to study the culinary arts? Yes, I wanted to learn about the national cuisines of a number of different countries. After Spain, I also visited France and Germany, but I was always planning to return to Japan eventually to work at this inn. You weren't thinking about staying overseas? I made a promise with Nana's mother that we'd build and run an inn together. Nana's mother? That's right. I think it was during one of our high school trips, but we completely spellbound by this one inn we stayed at in Kyoto. I still remember it like it was yesterday. The look of the place, the amiable staff, the wonderful food, everything was so great. It felt almost like I barged into heaven just a tad too early. Nagasaki made a broad smile. I think I know that feel. However, as far as I remember, the inns in Kyoto are mostly traditional Japanese-style buildings made out of wood. That detail never had an influence on you? What charmed us was the otherworldly atmosphere inside. It felt as though we had traveled through time. We had all the choices in the world, and we decided to model our place according to what we liked the most. Nana inherited Miki's love for Western antiques. I was also quite into fables and old Western houses at the time. We also liked how the cafeteria and the library were designed. But above all else, we were lucky that this mansion belonged to Miki's family to begin with. She inherited it after the passing of her grandmother, and then we remodeled it according to our taste. Kozue, who was absent-mindedly looking around the room with a bored expression, suddenly raised her head. By the way, Kozue, didn't you come here to ask her about the mansion? Said Nagasaki. Is it true that this place was a hospital before you took over? Lily turned to Kozue. I thought everyone had forgotten that rumor by now. In a way, you are right. This place was used as a sanatorium before the war, but it still belonged to the Fujisaki family. Its master at the time was a doctor and simply felt like he should lend some of his rooms to his long-term patients. I heard there were times when over 10 patients lived alongside him in the mansion. Is there like an alternate reality or something? Kozue listened to Lily's story in complete silence. I heard the grandfather clock in the lobby chime the hour. I think the pastry should be ready by now. Let's continue this conversation over some snacks and a cup of tea. Kozue gave the clock on the wall a quick glance. Lily stood up. I'll help. Thanks. I stood up myself and followed Lily into the kitchen. Still seated, Kozue picked up her carrier bag from the ground, placed it on her knees, and pulled out a folder packed with documents. She then opened it up and put it on the table. Her bag seemed to be made of cloth and had an engraving of a lily on it. Isn't that interesting? Is Kozue a distant relative, maybe? Later that afternoon, the conversation shifted completely to Kozue and Lily when they began discussing the mansion. Lily brought out an old schematic and spread it out across the table. Kozue kept pointing at the various parts that piqued her interest. Why is this well in such an inconvenient location? There used to be a rear exit in the western wing. However, it got blocked as we expanded the cafeteria. No one was using the well by that time, though. Next, she pointed at the roof. Where does this chimney connect to? You noticed the most interesting of things. It's connected to the stove of this room. You saw the spiral staircase in the lobby, right? That will lead you to the roof. The chimney was originally used for baths. Her hand paused for a second before traveling to the pulveron on the white porcelain plate resting on the table. She picked it up and put it into her tiny mouth. Pulverons looked like rectangular cookies at a glance, but their texture was similar to an Okinawan shinsuko. They also carried the scent of cinnamon. They would almost literally melt in the mouth. Well, save for the hard almonds that would crack between your teeth. The cinnamon and the almonds created a very balanced mixture of scents and flavors. Honestly, I had never eaten anything like this before. Lily told us that the pulverons originated from Andalusia in Spain. Kozue licked the snow powder off her fingers and, after taking a sip of her black tea, placed the cup of its saucer with a light clang. She then glanced at the clock on the wall. Thank you. This was very educational. You are welcome. Is it okay if I come talk to you again? Feel free to visit whenever you like. Maybe my doors are always open to such cute guests. Kozue answered Lily's words with a blank stare. You'd be even cuter if you smiled a bit more. Kozue paused for a few seconds, seemingly analyzing the idea, then stuffed all her things in her bag and left the room. You can come by any time. Kozue, without turning back, climbed the stairs and disappeared from sight. I'll go see the princess off. Nagasaki rose to her feet. Lily and I saw the two off. I wonder if she's planning to be an architect or a designer in the future. It's pretty inspiring to see someone so young start from such an early age. I agree. She's quick on the uptake and is clearly motivated. If only she acted a bit friendlier, she'd be a favorite among teachers. Lily paused there. It seemed as though she was just about to reveal the reason behind Kozue's behavior. Like Nagasaki said before, everyone had their own individual circumstances. Maybe she likes you, but isn't good at showing it. I feel like you could have given her some even better advice, though. Lily kept her fingers on her teacup's handle without actually lifting up the cup itself. Nana told me you were running a design office in the city. I am. What kind of job is it exactly? I got that question a lot. We meet our clients' demands, whatever they may be. Do you make advertisements for magazines and TV stations? If the project calls for it. I believe it's an expanding business. Radios, newspapers, television, almost everyone uses them these days. Your workload must be increasing by the day, or am I wrong? You're right that we get more offers nowadays. However, most of the big companies already have their established ties with old advertising agencies, so a relatively new place like ours tends to only get local, small-scale projects. Oh, so it's an old business, actually. Advertising has been around for over 100 years. I see. Are you interested in advertising? Lily waved her hand in front of her face. No, the topic simply came up when I chatted with someone in the town the other day. Living up here in the mountains in the middle of nowhere leaves me with plenty of time to think and ponder, you see. I see. Lily smiled, and I couldn't help smiling in return. With voices, it's just gotten to the point now where it's like turning off one switch and turning on another. I just go straight into their voice without even thinking about it. I heard the grandfather clock chime for the nth time. I think I should be going. Oh, I didn't realize it's gotten so late. Just give me a second. Lily promptly vanished into the kitchen and returned with a basket full of pastries neatly lined on a piece of kitchen paper sporting a flower design. Take this with you. Thank you very much. I'll make sure to use them as a midnight snack. You can hand the basket to Nana when she comes to your room. Thank you. Both the tea and your pastries were delicious. It's been so long since I had the chance to chat with a fresh face. I'd be happy to talk some other time, so don't be shy. All right. I gave her a small bow and headed towards the exit. Miss Sachiko? Yes? I think Nane likes you very much. She's been working at this inn since she was a child, and with her hobbies being antiques and working in the fields, she never had any friends her age. Would you mind becoming her first? I'm also having fun spending time with her. I see. I suppose that was an empty concern on my part. Lily gave me the warmest smile I'd seen from her today. Oh, that's right. She stops me again. I forgot about it earlier, but I know the architect who is responsible for remodeling this place. I think Kozue might be interested in meeting him, too. Could you tell her for me when you see her around? Of course. Well then, see ya. I made another bow, and Lily waved me goodbye. I'm sorry for holding you up so many times. I'm done now, I promise. Goodbye. Oh, what a nice lady. And is this hinting that Sachiko and Nane are going to be doing stuff soon? Oh, it's Narasaki's point of view now. Her slender fingers reached out to the book on the top shelf, but instead of pulling it out, only managed to push it deeper inside. Here you go. Standing behind Kozue in her wooden stand, I took the volume she was trying to reach. I thought you went home. I held up the stuffed doll in front of her as she turned around. I was planning to go after checking this. Ignoring the doll, she climbed down from the stand and walked over to the same desk as yesterday while carrying a large book. I sat down in the seat in front of hers. Kozue opened the book right away and began scribbling down some notes. Oh, right. Lily said she could introduce you to an architect if you're interested. He could show you how the actual work gets done. But didn't she tell that to Sachi? Maybe Sachi passed it along. I see. When? I don't know. She didn't mention it, so I suppose they can arrange it whenever. You can ask her yourself. Kozue stared at me for a few long moments until finally breaking our gaze. I am grateful for what you did today. Thank you. She muttered that without looking at me while continuing to scribble away at her papers. Is this really that important for you? Not really. I'm just looking it up because I'm curious. How did you get so interested in this place to begin with? It was close. I don't really care what it is. I just like doing research. There are a lot of people who like crossword puzzles, right? It's the same. Crossword puzzles? If you know how many windows there should be in a room, you could tell how many rooms a building has just by looking at it from the outside. You could tell it has a fireplace, if there's a chimney. And as you do research like that, you find more and more things that answer your questions. It's like a crossword puzzle, right? So you don't have any special feelings for this place? Kozue continued scribbling without answering. All I could hear was the rustling of paper and the light thud of the pen as it pressed against the desk. I looked up at the ceiling to realize it was already dark outside. The sounds of writing suddenly ceased. I turned my gaze to Kozue and found her staring at me. Why do you care about me so much? To be completely honest, it's because you remind me of my good friend. What kind of person is she? She regarded me with another one of her sharp stares. She was a smart girl who liked books. Kind of like you. You could say she was also kind of difficult to deal with. I don't think she had any other friends besides yours truly. Kozue mumbled something as she began stuffing her notes in her bag. Are we going to get some more Nagasaki backstory here soon? This is only our second time from her perspective. I picked up the book she left lying on the table. Kozue didn't say anything, so I returned it to its original place on the shelf. I turned around to see Kozue staring at me, all ready to go. She broke our gaze right away and started toward the exit. I followed after her, leaving the library. I caught up to her on the stone-paved road and continued walking with her until we came to the fork that split off to the mansion. You live behind that mountain? Yes. I heard there was a small village there. Is it close? Yes. I'd love to see it. Can I come with you for part of the way? Kozue stole a short glance at me and let out a small sigh. She didn't outright reject me, so I kept going. We passed the road that split to the mansion, eventually reaching a set of stone stairs. We ascended them and found ourselves on an outside road. Kozue continued up the slanted, unpaved slope without changing her speed. Looking behind, I saw the three-way junction we passed with the car back when I first came to the mansion. I turned back and addressed Kozue. Who's we? Okay, Nagasaki drove herself. Sachiko was driven up there, but what in the world? How did you feel about meeting Lily today? I caught up to Kozue and lined up next to her as she gave me a puzzled look. Everyone was calling her an aunt, so I imagined it'd be someone older. I thought she'd be at least as old as Nane's mother. Kozue didn't seem too interested and just shrugged. Yeah, I thought so too. After a few minutes, we found ourselves in front of a small tunnel. A single car would have trouble fitting in. We reached the end of the short tunnel and emerged onto a wide basin. The irrigation ditches sprawled all across the area, disappearing beyond the mountain. A small river flowed in the middle. Most of the fields were either rice or wheat plantations, with a few isolated farms visible here and there. We continued down the gentle slope of the unpaved road along the river. It's beautiful here. There's nothing here. That could be a good thing depending on how you look at it. I stopped, but Kozue didn't. The distance between us began to grow. I think I'll be turning back around here. Kozue seemed on the verge of looking back, but ended up continuing onwards without paying me any further attention. As I made my way back through the tunnel, I realized that the southern end of the mountain was brighter than the northern one. Now it's Sachi's turn. I was walking through the inner yard, watching the orange-tinted light of dusk illuminate the second-floor windows, when I spotted Nane approaching with a cartwheel of vegetables. She looked like a beggar from some old fable, her forehead covered in sweat and mud, her face frozen in a broad smile. Oh! She waved my way after spotting me, just like she did this morning. Looks like it was a bountiful harvest. We're having lots of fresh vegetables for dinner tonight. Oh, right. Did you manage to meet my auntie? Yes. I raised the basket in front of her. I see you got yourself some pulverons. I saw her making them this morning. Those things are to die for. Care for some? You sure? Yes. Nane came closer, pulling her hands out of the muddy cotton gloves. Oh. There was still some dirt on her hands. It must have seeped through the gloves. Here you go. I picked up one of the pulverons and dangled it in front of Nane's mouth. She took a bite. It's good. I love how it melts in your mouth, she said while wiping her forehead. Is Lily not a full-blooded Japanese? Nane paused for a few moments, then burst into laughter. I see she still introduces herself as that. Is that not her real name? I gave her an incredulous look. She's 100% Japanese. It's just that, apparently she thought her real name didn't suit the mood of this place, so she changed it up a bit. I see. Her real name's Yorika. Yorika. That's a beautiful name. I agree. Lily was apparently the name of a character in a movie she liked as a child, but I can't comment much on that since I never saw it. I see. Nane's gaze was transfixed on the basket, so I gave her another pulveron. Anyway, I've got to get back and start preparing for dinner. I'll be looking forward to it. Oh, you totally should. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow. The nurse leaned down and waved the boy goodbye. Goodbye. The boy took his mother's hand, who had leaned down just like the nurse, and continued toward the gates of the kindergarten where his parents' car waited. Red dragonflies fluttered against the backdrop of the crimson sunset. I returned to my book. After a bit of time, another car arrived, and there was one less child again. Oh, it's a young Takako! Look at her! She's so adorable! She is so cute! What are you reading? A child's voice caught me unawares. I looked from the book to see a young girl with a ponytail staring at me. Let's play if you're alone, she suggested before I could answer. I'm not alone. I glanced at my red-haired friend beside me. She was looking at the ponytailed girl. Was there any significance to that, or was it just some kind of a flashback to Takako as a child? Nagasaki Clinic bathroom has been unlocked. Kitchen has been unlocked. Chapter 3. Promise. Well, I guess we should check out those tips. Give me a chance to save my game and I'll do just that. Back to Takako's perspective. Save the game right here. Yes. Nameless disease. Checking out the 2 new tips. Bathroom and... what was the other one? Bathroom and kitchen. Sachiko was on room 208's bed, her upper body raised. Her gaze was fixed in front of her. It didn't seem like she had noticed me just yet. I tried addressing her, but received no reaction. Are you okay? Upon drawing closer to the bed, I noticed she was soaked all over and shaking from the cold. Her face and her skin in general were paler than ever. I placed a hand on her bed. The thing was cold as ice. I called out her name and placed my hand on her shoulder. Can you tell who I am? Sachiko slowly looked up at me. As her eyes finally began to focus, she asked me, in a tone calm and natural, what I was doing here so late at night. I came over to see how you were doing. Are you feeling okay? I'm a bit cold. I gave her a nod. You seem to be freezing. I think you should take a hot bath. I stuck my hands under Sachiko's freezing knees and chest, lifted her up, and carried her all the way to the bathroom. I made her sit on the edge of the bathtub. However, as I was preparing the shower, she stopped me, saying she could handle that much herself. I took Sachiko's soaked clothes and left the bathroom. The loud hiss of the shower filled my ears. Through the glass of the adjacent washroom, I continued keeping an eye on her. Still sitting on the edge of the bathtub, Sachiko poured some hot water on herself. White steam escaped through the slit of the open door. I leaned against the bathroom wall and organized my thoughts. A whole bunch of unnatural phenomena occurred in quick succession. From how Sachiko's bed was cold to the touch, to how I was seemingly transported to a completely unfamiliar room for a brief period of time. I wanted to investigate the room again, but couldn't leave Sachiko on her own. It also felt quite obvious that she was at the center of it all. Sachiko kept telling me how certain things happening at the clinic were odd, however, she had yet to say a single thing about that earlier phenomenon. It's possible that to her, what had happened wasn't odd in the slightest. I gave the notebook I'd previously placed on the bathroom shelf a glance. I ended up bringing it with me in the heat of the moment. After giving the shower another quick look, I picked up the notebook. I opened to the last few entries, the ones I had previously skipped. It had a passage about how Takako was feeling worse. She passed away due to an illness. There were no details regarding the exact nature of the illness, but it seemed like Takako wasn't hospitalized and instead received treatment at home. I looked for the date Sachiko came to my clinic, but there was no entry like that. I flipped back to the last entry. It was yesterday. I heard the shower handle turn, accompanied by the sound of the water gradually stopping. I addressed Sachiko, successfully catching her attention. "I'll bring you a change of clothes." "All right. You could also take the bath if you're still feeling cold." "It's okay. I think I've warmed up enough." I left the room to get her a change of clothes. Both the corridor and the room had returned to a normal temperature, but I didn't feel like investigating that just now. I grabbed some clothes from the wardrobe and hurried back to the bathroom. Interesting. Sachiko was still sitting on the other side of the glass door. As I placed her clothes in the bathroom basket, she suddenly asked me how long it had been since she came here. "Today makes the 5th day." "I've never stayed here for that long." "Yeah." "Are you sure I'm not bothering you?" "I'd rather you didn't think like that. This is my job." "But I have to do my best to cooperate, right?" "It would certainly make the process easier." "I suppose so." "Is there anything in particular you want me to do?" "I thought about it, but I'm not sure." "Everything in this clinic exists for a reason. Do you remember how you got here?" "I don't. I'm sorry. I was here before I realized it." "There has to be something." "What do you think?" I thought back to the day Sachiko came here. The first thing she did was tell me about Takako. I tried to avoid the subject so as to not upset her, but perhaps that was precisely the hint for what she wanted from me. "Maybe you came here to talk about Takako." "To talk about Takako? What exactly?" "Let's see. For example, I don't know much about what happened to you two after you left for Tokyo. I'd definitely be interested to hear more about that." "All sorts of things happened." "How about we talk about that for a while after you're done? I mean, if you're okay with it." "In the middle of the night?" I finally remembered what time it was. Still, I didn't feel like I'd be able to sleep, so I figured it'd be for the best to hear her out as much as possible. "I'm good as long as you're not too sleepy." Sachiko ended up agreeing to my proposition. Does the temperature have anything to do with this? Sachiko finished her bath, got changed, and dried her hair in her room. In the meantime, I prepared some coffee and white chocolate for us to snack on. Sachiko sat down in her seat and began telling me about her memories of the past, starting from when they left our hometown. About how they were originally employees of a particular company, about how they quit, and how they traveled to countless countries together. Sachiko summarized everything briefly, but with enough detail to give me a vivid picture of everything that happened. "I went to a southern island with Takako quite a while back. As we were gazing at the stars there, she said that nothing that happened would ever disappear. The same way we still saw the light of stars from 100 years ago in the night sky, that the same sight would still be visible in real time on some faraway planet. I feel the same way. But if that's true, I wonder how far I'll be able to go without her. You remember her just fine, don't you? I hope so. Our conversation paused there as Sachiko took a sip of her coffee. She told me a large variety of stories, and all of them were easy to understand. I heard about their plans for the future, the hurdles they ran into, and the ways they managed to overcome them. Her memories were clear and precise, like stories from a book. They all had roots, which connected to the trunk and then the branches, ending in countless leaves and fruits, each a story on its own. As a result, I didn't merely listen. I saw what she had once seen. Perhaps I really did want to talk to someone about Takako. Sachiko placed the cup on the table. I agreed. I'm impressed. You were getting around even better than I thought. I can tell what you were thinking about us, Sachiko made a faint smile. I mean, I'm impressed you retained your free spirit even while working for a company. It wasn't exactly easy, but it wasn't too hard either. You were always smart, and Takako was always decisive and the first to act. I think you made quite a team. So whoever this is knew Sachiko and Takako. Takako is actually really smart herself, at least when it comes to ideas and inventiveness. You leave her to her devices for a couple minutes, and she'll soon find something to amuse herself with. Even back in elementary school, she kept getting us involved in all sorts of stuff. Yeah, whether it's a game or a job, she never runs out of ideas. So is this Nagasaki? Is this her or is this not her? Compared to that, I was no better than a dry well. I only survived because she kept sharing her water with me. Takako may have chosen you because you knew how to put that water to use. Sachiko paused and focused her eyes on the top of the table. Perhaps Takako noticed your talent from the very beginning. She has a pretty good intuition, too. Sachiko took a bite of the chocolate, sipped her coffee, and let out a breath. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, giving her a somewhat refined air. It looked like she had finally managed to relax a little. I wanted to share my memories with someone. Up until now, if I ever had doubts about something, all I had to do was ask Takako. But from now on, I'll have to start thinking for myself. But then the memories we shared were too detailed and plentiful for one person. I'm not entirely sure I understand. Sachiko shook her head. I'm sorry, that was a poor choice of words. I myself don't understand half of what I meant. I know you're trying to tell me something. It would have been better if you could have predicted it, if I could have predicted it by myself, but it's okay. Thank you. Sachiko made a gentle smile. However, seeing that made me somewhat sad. There would probably never appear another person in her life who could understand her from half a word. And I knew that the parts no one could understand would sooner or later disappear from one's mind. But at least I can make sure to remember everything you tell me. The past won't change, even if I forget it. Memories and their loss is exactly what I'm researching. You could say I'm a professional at not letting people forget things. I just want some weight off my shoulders. I brought my chair over to the bed and kept talking to Sachiko until she fell asleep. I summarized the highlights of my conversation with her on a memo pad. The clock had just struck 2 a.m. I continue to have questions. I'm beginning to formulate a theory of what's really going on, but it's a sad thought and I don't want to delve in it. Now moving on to the kitchen. Then we can go back and see what Takako's up to. Complete silence descended upon the room as Sachiko fell asleep, almost as if time itself had stopped. I grabbed the notebook I found earlier and started reading it from the beginning. It felt a bit different after having heard Sachiko talk about those memories. Like it would lead me back to that cold, dark room. After reading through the entire notebook, I returned to the first page. This time, I compared its contents with my own memos about what Sachiko had told me. I was hoping to find the date marking the divergence between the two. I rubbed my heavy eyelids with one hand while the other was busy holding down the diary. After some careful deliberation, I picked out a date. I placed the notebook on my knees and opened it to the corresponding page. I read through the entry one more time, then pulled out a cutter knife from my coat pocket, then removed all of the entries after that date from the notebook. I tucked those pages into my pocket. Why would you do that? It was 4:30 according to the clock. I gave the black window a look. It looked almost like the darkness was swirling inside its frame. Why would you do that? And what do you mean diverging? My arm slipped from the armrest, pulling me out of sleep. Sachiko slowly sat up in bed. Good morning. Good morning. After greeting me in a low voice, Sachiko looked at the clock. It was 12 o'clock. Hungry? Sachiko opened her mouth, then closed it again and nodded. We left the room together and continued to the kitchen. I looked for something in the fridge that can be eaten with little preparation. In the end, I pulled up some bread, pork chops, cheese, and salad, placing them all on a plate. I cleaned everything from the table, carried the chair from the corner of the room to it, and made Sachiko sit down. As I was filling our cups with freshly made coffee, Sachiko finally gave me a sober look. Did we do well yesterday? I did all that I could. Sitting down in my chair, I put some cheese and salad onto my bread and took a bite. Sachiko mimicked me. One sandwich was enough to fill me up. I was more concerned with sleeping than eating at the moment. Meanwhile, Sachiko ate 3 sandwiches. Do you want me to bring another one? No, I've had enough. You ate quite a bit, if I'm being completely honest. I was feeling really hungry. You had no appetite over the last few days, so that's a relief. I feel a lot better, thank you. Sachiko took a sip of her coffee. I picked up a slice of cheese that didn't fit on any of the sandwiches. Sachiko placed the coffee cup on the table and glanced at the window. The outer part of the window was protected by black bars that were slightly bent at their edges. Beyond them, you could see the trunk of the tree in the inner yard. I couldn't tell exactly what she was looking at. I'll keep this diary for you. There was nothing but disinterest in Sachiko's voice as she gave me her permission. Feelings always fade with time. It's hard to maintain them if you live your life normally. Are you trying to console me? Yeah. It was so convoluted I barely understood it. Sachiko made a cheerful smile and looked at her hands resting on her knees. We started writing that after Takako got sick. Perhaps it's best to do as you say. I'll keep it for you. Also, once you find that your mood has returned to normal, the sooner you leave this place, the better. Still holding her coffee cup, Sachiko thanked me with a nod. I met her gratitude with a smile. I'll prepare a bath for the evening. We ended up chatting half the night away, so how about we let some hot water wash the exhaustion away and go to bed early for now? So, Sachi's notebook is being kept by whoever this is. That was a short tip. I guess that will bring Sachi's stay there to an end. The tips are not helping. I am still just as confused as ever. I probably won't figure out everything until this game is over, and even then, the game might end and I still might not figure it out completely. Mystery. Keeps you engaged. Again, Takiko's perspective here. I woke up around noon after the day I had my fit. Both the headache and the ringing in my ears were gone without a trace. As I sat up, I spotted a familiar notebook resting on the dining table. Mayuko told me to stay in the night duty room until she returned, so I killed some time by doing nothing in particular. After that, Mayuko brought me lunch and we ate together. It was udon and some tangerines. I wanted something more interesting. Don't force yourself to eat everything if you aren't feeling hungry. I think I'm okay. If anything, I feel like my appetite has gone up. Most of the other patients have trouble getting out of bed the next day following a fit. It can even upset their life rhythm. With that in mind, I think it'd be better for you to have something light now and maybe eat a bit more for dinner later. This was your first fit since coming here, right? I nodded. I'll have to read all that now. Oh, I'll have to read all that now? I asked, pointing at the notebook on the table. I love doing Takako's voice, it's so fun. I explained your condition a while back. Do you remember? I do. It was something this place specialized in. Fit-induced amnesia. I'd lose some of my memories with each new attack. It was a newly discovered disease that had yet to even be named. So, in here, we just called it the condition. Most patients tend to lose larger chunks of memories, ranging from a 1-month period to an entire year, sometimes even more. But you never really forget things gradually. Little by little, right? Right? Whatever. Right. You lose a whole set of memories right away, and that's it. Mayuko answered with a nod. As such, you can skim through the parts of your diary that you are sure you can remember. You will spot the bits you've forgotten right away. Although if you're curious, you can read all of it as many times as you want. Well, maybe I've just forgotten a day or two that aren't even logged. I picked up the old notebook. With that as her cue, Mayuko stood up. I'll come check on you when I have time off from work. You're worrying too much. Mayuko slid her feet into her slippers, gave me a quick smile, and left the room. Once I was sure she had left, I heaved a brief sigh. Then I opened the diary. There were 3 notebooks in total, including the new one, which only had a few days recorded in it. One notebook encompassed about a year, which meant I had about 2 years' worth recorded. I turned to the first page and ran my eyes over the first entry written in my hand. Looking at my own writing was a little embarrassing. On the other hand, seeing my past self come to life on the pages was quite exciting, so I read everything without skipping a single detail. By the time I got to the second month, though, I realized it was taking too long. After that, I started reading only every second or third entry. There were parts I remembered well, and some that I had forgotten. I'd wake up, do some work, eat, take a bath, then go to sleep. It was pretty much that over and over again. I could only really keep track of entries that mentioned something unusual. As such, I continued through the notebook, reminiscing about my past. From time to time, I felt as though there was another me inside that notebook, and I was simply observing her from high above. At times like that, I felt like my past self wasn't really me at all. Evening had come. Around the time my notebook's pages began to be tinted in orange, Mayuko dropped by the room. I was starting to get hungry, but when I asked her about it, she said that dinner would soon be ready. She also told me to try and bear it for a while longer, and only handed me a few candles to ease my immediate hunger. Candies, ugh. The rectangle-shaped candies came in wrappings of various different colors. I unwrapped a green one first and put it in my mouth, then did the same with a pink one. They both had about the same taste. This brings back memories. I think my grandmother used to give me candies just like these. Where did you get them, Mayuko? I don't remember. I think I just bought them at the store. She meant the small privately owned store at the port. It's pretty interesting to see stores over here that don't belong to any chain. You don't see their kind much in the big city. Your grandmother must have bought candies from a store just like that. After some more small talk, Mayuko left the room to prepare dinner. When she came back, the sun had already set. I had finished reading the diary and was about to put some tea into the water I boiled for myself. Have you finished? Yeah, more or less. Did you spot any parts you've forgotten? I tilted my head a little. Not really. There were a few parts I could barely remember, but nothing to the extent where I'd start suspecting that my memories were gone. So there were no passages that felt completely new to you? No? I see. Does that mean I didn't forget anything this time around? Mayuko slowly shook her head. I doubt that. There are times when you feel you haven't forgotten anything, but it turns out to be just a short episode that wasn't really important. Or it was something you remembered as you read the diary. In your case, I'd say it could be either of those possibilities. I see. Mayuko interrupted me as I wrestled with that possibility. I'm sure you're tired, Takako. I have your dinner ready. What did you make tonight? You'll find out when you come to the cafeteria. I followed Mayuko out of the room. I made it a little more extravagant than usual, so you can look forward to it. You remember I'm not a fan of yam and vinegar, right? I hated those things, but Mayuko loved them. It wasn't to the extent I couldn't eat them, but they tended to come up a lot in dishes Mayuko labeled as delicious, so that Pollock roe wasn't too bad when I forced myself to try it, but this time I made sure to fix up something you'll definitely like. This VN certainly loves food, doesn't it? Our dinner tonight turned out to be a Hamburg steak and fried prawn. I pointed out to Mayuko that she might be treating me too much like a child, although I appreciated getting an extra portion of rice. The next day, my life returned to its usual rhythm. I woke up in the morning, exercised, then did the work I was asked. I ate, bathed, wrote in my diary, and slept. Nothing in my schedule changed much. Well, maybe except for the fact that I spent more time in the night duty room with Mayuko. The weather was great this morning. Warm sunlight entered my room through the windows as the sound of radio calisthenics reverberated through the walls, across the walls. My hand touched Mayuko's as I stretched out my chest. Today she was exercising next to me. It suddenly got pretty cramped in here when we both extended our arms. Mayuko continued her exercise without minding me, so I tried turning a little so we wouldn't be on the same line. Before I realized it, though, she had already turned as well. It's nice to exercise once in a while. Mayuko wore a skirt, so she skipped most of the leg-related exercises that would have been too revealing. You should do this every day. Yeah. It reminds me of summer vacations back in elementary school. Did you have to do it for stamps too? Yes. When I was in my 6th year, I was actually the one doing the stamping. I did that too. I used my usual family name stamp, but the ones with more complicated names got priority treatment. The more strokes, the better. Names like that look cooler on paper, apparently. The exercise ended with taking a deep breath. I let my hands fall to my sides, and I turned off the radio. Are you sure it's not just your imagination? I used my family name stamp too, and I didn't feel like I was treated different than anybody else. Your boobs have always been big, haven't they? Mayuko remained silent until I turned around and our eyes met. I think that's just your imagination too. Now that I think about it, I never managed to make it through all the exercises during my vacations. Did you get anything if you end up with a perfect stamp record? No idea. Maybe they award you with stationery or alarm clocks or something along those lines. I figured it'd be something like that. I sat down on the bed. Why alarm clocks, though? I get the part about stationery, but... At our school, that was the prize for a perfect attendance record. Is that really something a person with a perfect attendance record would need? Perhaps not, Mayuko smiled to herself. You're a pretty diligent one, though, Mayuko. How come you couldn't keep up a perfect attendance record for the radio exercises? Our family went to my grandparents' house for Oban. Most other families also go on trips during the summer, so getting that prize is not as easy as it sounds. Yeah. Mayuko picked up a small parcel from one of the shelves and held it up in front of me. Look, I found this in the storage room on cleaning day. It was wrapped in light brown craft paper and had the size and weight of a dictionary or a really thick book. Upon checking the other side, I realized it was addressed to me. Where exactly did you find this? The storage room on the second floor. It might have gotten there by accident when we were rearranging our belongings. It's not written whom it's from. I think it's a book or something like that inside. This is some good paper. I'd hate to tear it open by hand, so maybe you could lend me a knife? Of course. Without getting up from the bed, I reached out and placed the parcel on the side table. After that, I returned to my previous position. Well then, let's go do the laundry, said Mayuko. Nah, she's cute. I had a really scary dream the other day. The morning sun filled the second floor corridor with its bright rays of light. Mayuko's silhouette flickered in between the light coming from the window and the shadows covering the walls. What kind of dream was that? I can't remember it anymore. Mayuko picked up the laundry basket, her expression blank. I was helping her with the laundry today, so I had a basket in my hands as well. I just remember it being really scary. Well, sometimes remembering dreams like that makes you realize they weren't all that scary at all. Yeah, that's the problem. I think I got the voices swapped. I'm not sure I can help you there. She turned to me, making the top sheets begin to slide off from her basket. Oh! I caught them with one hand. Oh, yeah. Nice catch. Will I get a golden glove for this, do you think? I wrapped the sheet around my hand and returned it to the top of the basket. Perhaps, but try not to go too crazy with the workout routine until you start feeling better. We continued down the corridor, its wooden floorboards creaking below our feet. I glanced out the window through the branches of the comfort tree and spotted a girl walking down the stone-paved path. Sane? Mayuko looked out the window too. The girl momentarily disappeared among the branches blocking our sight, but then popped up again in front of the entrance to the building on the other side. Isn't that Kozue? What? Kozue disappeared into the West Wing building, her silky hair fluttering behind. What? Maybe she went for a walk. I mean, the weather's pretty nice. It certainly is. And a great day for laundry, too. Mayuko resumed walking through the corridor. Takako knows who Kozue... Wait. Is this the same building? True enough. It was indeed a perfect day for laundry. A gust of wind swept across the roof, the white sheets attached to the long iron bars fluttering in its wake. The dazzling blue sky extended all the way to the sea. A handful few puddles littered the roof as the only remnants of the heavy rainfall we'd been having lately. Well, aside from some dew on the tree leaves. Please hold that side for me. Okay. I clasped one side of the sheet while Kozue pinned it to the iron bar. With that, our baskets were now empty. I guess we're done. Thank you for your help. This took a lot less time than I thought it would. Aside from a few smaller clouds that looked like torn up pieces of cotton drifting around, the sky was blue as far as the eye could see. I could feel a cold, somewhat moist breeze on my skin. When does your job start? Right after lunch, around 1 o'clock, I suppose. Then why don't we do some sunbathing until then? Right here? Yeah! Mayuko looked around the roof, then up at the sky. The white sheets fluttered in front of a blue background. The floor's still a little wet, though. Let's use the picnic sheet you've got in your room. It's pretty warm today, so I suppose we might as well. Finding the driest area, we spread out our pink polyester sheet. Takako's so cute! We took off our shoes and sat down. Mayuko took out a sandwich, delicately wrapped in brown paper, from the basket and handed it to me. I undid the wrapping to realize it was made so I could eat it without my hand coming in direct contact with the sandwich. Did you do this wrapping? It looks like something that could be sold in stores. It's easy. I could teach you how to do it later. Yeah, do that! The sandwich had some potato salad, 2 thinly sliced pieces of tomato, and some lettuce decorating the whole thing like laces. Hungry after all the work I did today, I quickly took a bite. Tastes great! No need to rush. I have a whole lot more where that came from. Mayuko pulled out a pot and 2 teacups from the basket and filled them with black tea. Would you have preferred green tea? No, I'm fine with black. Today's tea was not bitter at all and smelled like fruit. I placed the cup down and grabbed another sandwich from the box. This one had scrambled eggs, pieces of thinly sliced ham, and lettuce. The fresh lettuce perfectly complemented the soft texture of the ham and eggs. I ended up gobbling the whole thing down right away. It feels nice to see someone enjoy the food you made. Well, it's super delicious. I'm sure you'd be popular if you opened a shop. That's a good idea. Mayuko made a happy smile. Yeah, I could be the owner. Oh? Are you familiar with management? Sure I am, provided I get to eat food like this every day. In that case, I'll think about it. The sea breeze ruffled my hair a bit. The waves of the blue sea gave way for the waves of green as the trees across the entire mountain swayed in sync with the wind. Have you gotten used to the sanatorium, Takako? Yeah, more or less. It's full of beautiful sights, the meals are delicious, and best of all, there's a good-looking nurse with big boobs. Mayuko looked down at her breasts. That's sexual harassment. I'm sorry. Don't sue me. Well, okay. I'll forgive you this one time. Thanks. Is something the matter? I gazed off into the distance when Mayuko interrupted me. Were you reminiscing about something? Not at all. I made a light smile. But I feel like the scenery was about to make me remember something. Something fun? Mayuko smiled as well. I reached out to the sandwich box to realize there was only one left. I paused and glanced at Mayuko. She nodded with a smile. Another sudden gust of cool wind blew past us. It's cold. We'll be having snowfall before long. It'll get colder and colder as it rains, so we won't be able to have picnics on the roof anymore. That's too bad. The conditions are rigid in the mountains. It might be boring for you, but it's best not to go outside during winter if you don't have any pressing matters. Even after sunset, the gray clouds drifted along the sky and all the way to the sea. The woodlands stretching below the heavy clouds lost their once vivid colors, making the scenery resemble an old monochrome photograph. Oh, it's Sane again. As I opened Sane's door with a yawn, she looked up at me from her bed. Hello. Sane closed the book she'd been holding and placed it on the bedside table. On the nearby table rested an unfinished lunch with the wrapping still on it. Are you not feeling well? Sane lightly shook her head. I was too absorbed in my book to care about anything else. Are you alright? I heard you had an attack. I'm okay. It wasn't that bad this time. I sat down in the cane chair that had been left next to the bed. I could see some moisture accumulating on the wrap around the tray. On the other hand, the wooden dessert bowl next to it was empty. You seem to have eaten the coffee jelly, though. Don't tell me it's what you came here for. I turned to her and waved my hand. No, I just wanted to borrow a paper knife. And I was also curious about how you were doing. Give me a second. Sane turned her body without breaking her sitting position and reached out to open the drawer on her side table. Same as always. Sane handed me the paper knife she fished out from the drawer. I walked over to her and took the knife. That's good to hear. Is it? Yeah. I suppose you're right. Sane also handed me a shawl that was lying on the bed. Thanks! I hung the shawl on the back seat of the cane chair and picked up the paper knife along with other thing I brought. What is this parcel-looking thing? Got it from Mayuko this morning. Apparently it was sent to me. I have no idea what's inside until I open it up and see for myself. I undid the straps and checked the edges of the parcel. Finding the one that felt the softest, I pierced it with my newly gained knife. I pushed the knife all the way to the other side, changing its angle. The craft paper had already fallen apart by the time I finished. There was a white cardboard box inside. As I opened its lid and turned the thing upside down, a notebook fell out. Looks like a notebook, said Sane. I realized it was a notebook because it looked just like the one I was using for my diary here. I inspected both its top and bottom. Its color had already begun to fade, which made it look older than any of my own notebooks. What's written in it? There was a date at the top of the first page with a bunch of text below it. It had the same design as our diaries. Looks like a diary to me. Wonder whom it belonged to. I checked both the first and the last pages, but couldn't find a name. After I gave up and returned to the first page to read it, Sane interrupted me. We don't know whose diary it is. There might have been some mistakes, so maybe it'd be better to ask Mayuko about it first? I guess you have a point. I placed the notebook on the table. My arms felt a bit cold, so I covered them with Sane's shawl. It felt like the temperature of Sane's room had dropped compared to when I came in. I glanced at the window. It was covered in dew. What is it about notebooks and color drops? Or temperature drops? I collected it all on my finger to form a droplet, which then fell as soon as I moved my finger away. What are you doing? When I turned around, I saw Sane laughing at me. Nothing, really. I noticed some dew on the window, so I thought it might have grown pretty cold outside. I pulled my chair to a spot with more moisture, only to realize there was already something in the window glass. Parting the curtains revealed a drawing of the window's dew-colored surface. Is this some animal? I messed that one up. Sane's face was ridden with guilt. I looked back at the glass again. Her drawing was quickly disappearing. In any case, my best guess was that it depicted some four-legged animal. Is this a cat? I was trying to draw a bear. I see. You might want to do this then. I placed a finger against the mouth of the drawing, then slid it in the shape of a fish. Is that a fish? A salmon! You often see bears holding them in their jaws in pictures. Cats eat fish too. I'm not talking about sorry here, okay? Anyway, if it doesn't look salmon-y enough, look, I can make its jaw a little longer. I breathed against the glass, making both the bear and the fish disappear. Oh, I'm sorry. I only wanted to erase the fish, but... Well, it's no big deal at any rate. The white on the window melted away like an iceberg in warm weather, and by the time it was gone, it left behind a pattern reminiscent of a face. Right. I had this really scary dream the other day, but I can't remember it. That's how most dreams are. I remembered it just fine when I woke up. I thought I could use it to scare everyone, so I was planning not to forget it, but maybe when you remember it, you'll realize it wasn't that scary at all. Mayuko said the same thing. Maybe I should just prepare myself a pen and some paper next time I go to bed. Sane snickered to herself. Takako, trying to jot these things down is all well and good, but are you writing your diary after a fit just like Ms. Mayuko told you? I am. Just recently I spent an entire day reading through all the notebooks I'd already filled. Jeez. Don't want to write something else down? You might forget it after your next attack. I don't really have that much stuff to write down. Mayuko didn't comment on the state of my diaries, but I had a feeling that continuing to sum up entire days in one sentence might piss her off. Oh, that reminds me. I know this one scary story about the sanatorium. What kind of story? Do you lock your room, Takako? No, I just can't be bothered. What about you? Well, you have a point. While it does feel somewhat pointless to lock our doors, the locks themselves were installed for a reason. Can you guess what the reason was? Not really. There were more people here in the past, so not everyone knew each other. I suppose that could be one explanation. However, what I've heard is the opposite. The locks were there to prevent patients from leaving their rooms. So they wouldn't escape? You wouldn't suspect it now, but in the past there were apparently cases of patients going missing. The nurses began locking them in the rooms so they wouldn't try to escape and hide during the night. Why would they try to escape? Were the chores too hard for them or something? Apparently it was more related to their memories. Did you remember anything when you read your diary, Takako? There were a few parts I couldn't remember all that well, but I feel that's still within healthy boundaries. They didn't use diaries in the past. They didn't even know the symptoms led to memory loss and were instead trying to treat them. Anyway, they didn't occupy themselves with their memories too much, and some patients ended up forgetting almost everything about themselves. You mean they became like amnesiacs? Sane slightly tilted her head. As in, forgetting all your memories since birth? That's what you're talking about, right? I nodded. Our symptoms are somewhat different, though. First, you have to realize that your various memories of phenomena happening around you, as well as your feelings in response to said phenomena, are different things. In our case, we mostly lose the feeling part of our memories. We might vaguely remember what happened, but we don't remember how we felt about it. Anyway, that's the kind of memory loss we're dealing with. I more or less understand the difference from her explanation. I gave her another few nods. But what of it? If you can remember the facts of your past, you won't forget how to read or write, or any other skills you need to survive in the world. Anyways, the ultimate end point of our condition is that we lose our individuality, our personalities, if you will. We lose interest in what we used to like and forget what we hated. That's the extent of what I was told about it. To give an example, imagine reading a book and understanding what's going on but not feeling anything about it, or having a meal and understanding its taste but being unable to decide whether or not it's delicious. That would suck. I think the symptoms had a name, but I've already forgotten. I think it was memory loss or something. I briefly pondered what she just told me, and realized that her story about locks hadn't been finished yet. I got the part about our condition, but what does it have to do about locks? Oh, that's right. Anyway, one of the early patients who displayed this memory loss something went missing apparently. They couldn't find them no matter where they looked. Everyone from the nurses to the town militia searched all over the mountain, but found nothing. At the time, they even thought the person may have been spirited away. Ugh. On top of it, Sane went on in an emphasized tone, if it ended there, it probably wouldn't have become a big of a thing. But sometime later, another patient disappeared the exact same way. Did that patient have the same symptoms too? Yes. Anyway, we finally reached the part about the locks. After the second case, the sanatorium added locks to the rooms of every patient to prevent any similar cases from cropping up. At the time, you couldn't unlock the doors from the inside, and the sanatorium staff had complete control over who would leave their rooms and when. And did that help? Sane shook her head. From what I've heard, people continued to go missing even after that. Patients that were confirmed to be in their rooms before bedtime disappeared by morning. Didn't they just climb out through the window or something? The windows were locked too, and there were no signs of the locks being broken either. They all vanished like a wisp of smoke. Well, it's not like people could actually do that, though. Everyone felt the same way, of course, but no matter how much they searched, they couldn't find a single trace of the missing patients. The only thing they understood was that the patients who had forgotten all about themselves and lost their personalities would eventually disappear. I tried to more or less summarize Sane's story in my mind. Patients didn't use diaries in the past. As the symptoms of memory loss grew worse, they forgot who they were. Finally, they disappeared without a trace. The story was peculiar, but then again, so was this sanatorium. I never heard about this kind of sickness before. Besides, patients here had jobs and duties, despite this being a sanatorium supposedly meant for relaxation. Well, the part about work was possibly because Mayuko was the only nurse on the grounds and couldn't manage everything by herself. But still, it was kind of weird that there were no doctors here, for example. I didn't think too much about it before, but it was peculiar for sure. I remember that odd feeling I had when I was cleaning the storage room. Maybe this place still has some unknown secrets. Anyway, it's all just a rumor, though. It was pretty interesting. Still, that part about people just disappearing didn't make much sense. Well, that's just how most rumors are. But then again, most rumors also have a bit of truth mixed into them now. If you're curious, you can always try it for yourself. I mean, you were complaining that writing your diary was a pain in the neck. Is that what it all comes down to? Sane snickered to herself. Okay, that's my stopping point. Oh, here we go. Save. There. Okay. Glad we read the tips. And I still have absolutely no idea what's going on. That thing about memory loss, definitely that has something to do with what's going on. I just know it. They wouldn't place that much emphasis on that without it meaning something. How does Takako know Kozue? Kozue. How does she know her? How does she know her? Like, I guess I gotta continue playing to find out. So I'll be continuing my playthrough of SeaBed, a Yuri visual novel, next Sunday. Based off of going through what we see in the gallery, I think we're maybe around the halfway point of this story, somewhere around there. Because this is page 3 of 6, so we got just a little more under 3 pages worth of content to go through. So I'm thinking that we are around halfway done with this. Somewhere around there. That's my guess. Thanks everyone for watching. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube after the fact. Shout out to the lurkers. Again, I'll be back on next Sunday to continue my playthrough of SeaBed, which is a really I give up trying to figure out what this is. On behalf of East Asia Soft, I have been Skull. Have yourselves a great day and a great week, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.